Claire had always been the kind of person who kept things running smoothly, even when life was falling apart behind the scenes. She worked as an assistant at a large tech company downtown, the kind of place where everyone walked fast, spoke fast, and worked even faster. She didn't stand out much. She wasn't loud or flashy, but when people needed something done right, they always turned to her. She had a calm way about her, a quiet focus that made others trust her. What no one knew was how heavy her life had become lately. Her mother had fallen seriously ill months ago. Surgery, medication, and recovery bills had swallowed almost everything Claire had saved over the years. She'd tried to stay positive, tried to smile when people asked how she was doing, but she was exhausted. Between hospital visits, long hours at work, and the endless worry about money, her days blurred together. Every morning she told herself to keep going. Her mother needed her. The bills wouldn't pay themselves. The company was in the middle of a busy quarter, and she couldn't afford to lose her job. The rent was due soon. Life didn't stop for anyone, and it certainly wasn't going to stop for her. Her coworkers noticed she looked tired, but no one really asked beyond a polite, "Rough night?" or "You okay?" They had their own problems to deal with. She always answered with a smile and said she was fine. People believed her because that was easier. Her boss, Daniel, was a man who didn't waste words. He was smart, successful, and precise. He wasn't cold, but he kept his distance. Most employees feared disappointing him because he noticed everything. Claire respected him deeply, even though he rarely said much to her beyond work instructions. He expected perfection, and she did her best to meet that standard. It was the end of the month, and a major report was due. Claire had been working late nights to get it done. The numbers had to be accurate, the layout professional, every line of data reviewed twice. She'd been staying long after everyone else had left, sometimes until the cleaning crew came through. That night, she sat in her small apartment, laptop open on the kitchen table. Her mother was asleep in the next room, her breathing soft and uneven. The house was quiet except for the hum of the refrigerator. On the table beside her computer was a pile of envelopes, hospital bills, pharmacy receipts, reminders, and statements. Claire hated opening them. She already knew what they said. Balance due. Her phone buzzed with a reminder from work. The report was due by midnight. She sighed and took a deep breath. She reached into her bag for her flash drive and pulled out one of the envelopes by accident. When she looked at it, she saw the newest hospital bill. The amount made her chest tighten. It was more than her monthly salary. She leaned back, closed her eyes for a second, and whispered to herself that it would be okay, even if she didn't believe it. She placed the bill next to her laptop, telling herself she'd call the hospital tomorrow to discuss a payment plan. Then she got back to typing, the screen light reflecting off her tired face. By the time she finished, it was almost midnight. Her eyes burned and her fingers ached from typing. She attached what she thought was the final report to an email, wrote a short note to Daniel, and pressed send. She didn't double-check it. She was too tired to think. All she wanted was a few hours of sleep. Morning came too soon. She woke up with a dull headache and the sound of her phone buzzing beside her bed. She got up, dressed quickly, and left without breakfast. She reached the office before most of her coworkers and sat at her desk with a cup of coffee, hoping caffeine would carry her through the day. Her inbox had several new emails, but one caught her attention immediately. The sender's name made her stomach twist. Daniel. The subject line was short. Received. She opened it, expecting him to thank her for the report or ask a question about the figures. Instead, there was a single line. "Are you sure this is the right file?" And beneath it, the attachment she had sent. Claire froze. She clicked the file and stared at the screen in horror. It wasn't the report. It was the hospital bill. The one with her mother's name, medical details, and the total due amount printed clearly in large numbers. Her throat went dry. Her hands began to shake. She wanted to hide under her desk. She had sent her boss a medical bill instead of the company report. How could she have been so careless? Her heart raced as she imagined him opening it, reading through it, wondering why on earth she had sent something so personal. She quickly typed a reply, apologizing for the mistake, attaching the correct document, and explaining that she must have mixed up the files after a long night of work. Her fingers trembled as she hit send. Then she just sat there staring at her screen, waiting for his response. Minutes passed. Then an hour, nothing. She couldn't focus on anything else. Her stomach churned every time she saw someone walk by Daniel's office. She half expected him to call her in and ask for an explanation, or worse, question her professionalism. By lunchtime, she was so anxious she could barely eat. She went for a short walk outside to clear her head, but it didn't help. When she came back, she saw Daniel pass through the hallway on his way to a meeting. He glanced at her desk briefly, gave a small nod, and kept walking. His expression was unreadable. She spent the rest of the day buried in work, trying not to think about it. She stayed quiet, avoided unnecessary conversations, and went home as soon as her tasks were done. Her mother was sitting up in bed when she arrived, smiling weakly. Claire smiled back, forcing cheer into her voice as she asked about her day. They ate dinner together quietly. Her mother noticed her silence and asked if something was wrong. Claire just said she was tired from work. She didn't have the heart to explain. How could she? How could she tell her mother that her boss had seen their private financial struggle? Later that night, as she was folding laundry, her phone buzzed. She glanced at the screen and saw an email notification. Her heart skipped when she saw the sender. It was from Daniel. She hesitated before opening it, bracing herself for a reprimand. The message was short. Don't worry about the mistake. Take care of your family. I'll handle the rest. She stared at the screen, confused. Handle the rest? What did he mean by that? Maybe he meant he'd review the report himself. Maybe he was just trying to be kind after realizing she was going through something personal. Still, his tone was different from his usual messages. There was warmth in it. She didn't know how to respond. She typed a quick thank you and sorry again and hit send. That night she lay awake thinking about his words. Something about them felt strange. But exhaustion soon pulled her under, and she slept deeper than she had in weeks. The next morning she decided to visit the hospital before work to arrange a payment plan. She carried her mother's patient file in her bag and waited at the billing counter for her turn. When her name was called, she explained that she wanted to discuss the balance. The woman behind the counter typed for a moment, then looked up and smiled. There's no balance due, she said kindly. It's been paid in full, Claire blinked. I think there's a mistake, she said softly. It couldn't have been paid. I haven't made any payments yet. The woman shook her head. No mistake. It was paid early this morning. Everything's cleared. Claire just stood there, speechless. Paid how? Her first thought was that maybe the insurance company had finally approved something. But that didn't make sense. They'd already denied coverage weeks ago. Then slowly, another thought began to form in her mind. Daniel. Her heart started to pound. Could it be? No, that couldn't be possible. Why would he do that? He was her boss, not her friend. But then she remembered his message. Take care of your family. I'll handle the rest. She walked out of the hospital in a daze, clutching her bag tightly. The sun felt too bright, the noise of traffic too loud. Everything around her seemed distant. She reached the office a little late, trying to act normal, though her thoughts were spinning. When Daniel passed by her desk later that day, he gave her the same small nod as always. But this time she saw something in his eyes that hadn't been there before, a quiet kindness, a trace of understanding. She wanted to thank him, to say something, but no words came out. So she just smiled faintly and he moved on without a word. That night she told her mother everything. Her mother listened in silence, tears welling up in her eyes. She reached over, took Claire's hand, and said, You see, sweetheart, there are still good people left in this world. Claire couldn't stop crying. All the exhaustion, the fear, the pressure, it all came pouring out. For the first time in months, she felt like she could breathe again. She didn't know how to repay the kindness she'd been shown, but deep down, she knew she'd never forget it. Sometimes life has a strange way of reminding you that you're not as alone as you think. Daniel sat in his office the next morning, staring at his computer screen but not really seeing it. He had barely slept the night before. The image of that hospital bill wouldn't leave his mind. It wasn't the mistake itself that bothered him, but what it revealed. He had worked with Claire for almost 3 years. She was quiet, efficient, never late, and never complained. He knew she stayed late sometimes, but he had assumed she was just dedicated to her job. Now, for the first time, he realized there might have been more to it. The bill had her mother's name on it, along with the long list of medical procedures and the staggering amount owed. Daniel wasn't a man who liked to pry into his employees' private lives, but seeing that number made something twist inside him. He had grown up watching his own mother struggle after his father passed away, working double shifts just to keep the lights on. For a moment, he saw a bit of his own past in that single document. He closed the file and leaned back in his chair. Outside his office window, the city looked the same as always. Busy streets, people rushing to work, cars honking, sunlight bouncing off glass buildings. But inside, he felt something stir that he hadn't felt in a long time. Compassion, maybe even guilt. He had been so focused on running the company, meeting targets, and pushing his team that he'd forgotten the people behind those numbers were human beings with lives and struggles of their own. He picked up the phone and called the finance department, asking if Claire had ever applied for financial assistance through the company's emergency program. The answer was no. She hadn't taken a single personal day either, even though she clearly needed it. That only deepened his respect for her and his concern. After a few minutes of silence, he made a decision. Without telling anyone, he called the hospital directly. The woman on the other end of the line was polite but cautious until he explained that he wanted to pay the outstanding balance in full. It wasn't about charity. It was about doing what felt right. The woman confirmed the amount, and within an hour the payment was processed. He didn't sign his name. He didn't want recognition. He just wanted to make sure that woman could breathe again, even if for a moment. Later that afternoon, he sent Claire a short email. He didn't mention the payment. He simply told her to take care of her family and not to worry about the mistake. But even as he typed it, he knew she would wonder what he meant by that. He didn't care. Some things didn't need to be explained. Over the next few days, Daniel noticed small changes around the office. Claire walked with a lighter step. She smiled a little more. He saw her laughing softly with Mia at the front desk one morning, something he had never seen before. It made him realize how deeply stress had been weighing on her before. He also noticed himself changing. He found his eyes lingering on his team a little longer, watching the tired faces, the small sighs people tried to hide when they thought no one was looking. It made him think of all the unspoken burdens people carried to work every day. Some were struggling with family, others with finances or loneliness. Yet they all showed up trying their best. He respected that more than he ever had. One evening, as he was leaving the office, he saw Claire still at her desk. The rest of the building was quiet except for the low hum of computers. He stopped by her workstation and said softly, "You should go home. It's late." She looked up, startled, then smiled nervously. "Just finishing a few things." He nodded, studying her for a second. "You've been doing great work lately." "I wanted to say that." Her eyes widened slightly. Compliments from him were rare. "Thank you," she said quietly. He gave a small smile and turned to leave. As he walked down the hallway, he realized he hadn't given that kind of acknowledgement to anyone in months. Maybe that needed to change. The next week, the company held its quarterly meeting. Daniel stood at the front of the room, presenting the usual slides about revenue and projections, but his tone was softer than usual. He spoke about teamwork, empathy, and the importance of looking out for one another. The staff exchanged glances. This was a different side of him. After the meeting, Claire approached him to drop off some documents. He could see she was hesitant, like she wanted to say something but wasn't sure if she should. Finally, she spoke. "Sir," she said quietly, "I just wanted to thank you again for understanding about that mistake I made last week. It meant a lot." He nodded. "Don't mention it." She hesitated, then added softly, "And thank you for, well, I don't know how to say it, but the hospital said the bill was cleared. I don't know how that happened, but if you had anything to do with it, thank you. You didn't have to do that." He met her eyes for a brief moment, then said simply, "You don't owe me thanks. Just take care of yourself and your family. That's all I ask." Her eyes glistened, but she nodded without pressing further. She understood that he didn't want recognition. That made her respect him even more. As the days turned into weeks, their working relationship shifted subtly. It wasn't about favors or gratitude. It was about mutual understanding. He trusted her more openly now, giving her bigger responsibilities, asking her opinion during meetings. She rose to every challenge, proving herself over and over. At the same time, Daniel began making quiet changes within the company. He instructed HR to create an employee assistance fund for medical emergencies. He didn't tell anyone why. It wasn't about credit. It was about ensuring that no one else had to hide their pain the way Claire had. He even arranged for mental health counselors to visit once a month. something that had never been offered before. One afternoon, Claire received an email inviting her to join a small internal team that would help plan the company's new People First initiatives. She couldn't believe it. She wasn't used to being noticed, let alone asked to be part of something important. When she walked into the first meeting, she was surprised to see Daniel already there, talking casually with others. He smiled when he saw her. "Glad you could join us," she smiled back, nervous but happy. As the discussion went on, she shared ideas about how the company could support employees who were dealing with health issues or family struggles. Her suggestions were thoughtful and practical. Daniel listened closely, occasionally nodding. He didn't interrupt or dominate the room. For once, he let others speak freely. After the meeting, as people were leaving, he stopped her for a moment. "You have good instincts," he said. "Keep speaking up." She thanked him and left with a small smile. For the first time in a long while, she felt like she was finally being seen, not just as a worker, but as a person. Outside of work, her mother was doing better. She had regained her strength, and her laughter filled their small apartment again. Sometimes she teased Claire about the mysterious boss who had changed their lives without asking for anything in return. Claire would smile and say, "He's just a good man, Mom." One rainy evening months later, Claire stayed late again, helping finish a proposal. Most of the office was empty. When she finally packed her things and walked to the elevator, she saw Daniel standing near the window, staring out at the city lights. She hesitated, then approached him. "Long day?" she asked softly. He glanced at her and smiled faintly. "Always." Then he nodded toward her bag. "You're still here, too. You should head home." She laughed a little. "I guess I picked up some of your habits." He smiled at that, then looked out the window again. "You know," he said, "when I started this company, I thought success was about numbers, growth, profit, expansion. But lately, I've realized it's about people, the ones who show up every day, even when life hits them hard." Claire stood quietly listening. There was sincerity in his voice, the kind that didn't need big words. He turned to her. "You reminded me of that." Her eyes softened. "You reminded me that kindness still exists," she said gently. They both smiled, and for a long moment neither said anything. The sound of rain against the glass filled the silence. That night, when Claire left the building, she felt lighter. The rain was falling harder now, soaking the sidewalks, but she didn't care. She lifted her face toward the sky and let the cool drops hit her cheeks. For the first time in years, she felt peace. Meanwhile, Daniel stayed behind, still looking out at the city. His reflection in the window seemed different, less rigid, more human. He thought about the chain of events that one small mistake had set in motion. It had started with a misplaced file and ended with a lesson he didn't know he needed. From that day on, the office culture began to change slowly. People smiled more, helped each other more, took time to ask how others were doing. The company wasn't just a workplace anymore. It felt like a community. Claire noticed it every day and couldn't help but feel proud. One morning, she received a handwritten note on her desk. It wasn't signed, but she recognized the neat handwriting. It said, "Thank you for reminding me that doing the right thing always matters." She smiled, folded the note carefully, and placed it inside her notebook. Some gestures didn't need to be spoken about. They just needed to be remembered. Life didn't suddenly become easy. There were still bills, challenges, and long nights, but now Claire faced them differently. She knew she wasn't invisible anymore. Her hard work, her quiet strength, they had made a difference. And somewhere, someone had noticed. For Daniel, it was more than just helping an employee. It was a turning point, a reminder that even in a world driven by deadlines and profits, humanity was still the most powerful thing of all. Claire sat on the corner of her bed that night, staring at her phone screen. The message from her boss was still there, plain and simple. "Your report can wait. Take care of your family. The bill is already paid." She reread it again and again, her heart pounding. It didn't make sense. How could this be real? Her mind refused to believe what her eyes saw. She quickly opened her laptop and searched the hospital's billing portal. Her fingers trembled as she typed in her mother's patient number. The page loaded slowly, her breath catching in her chest. When it finally appeared, she froze. The balance, once highlighted in red, now read "paid in full." She blinked, rubbed her eyes, and refreshed the page, thinking it might be a glitch. But the words stayed the same. Claire's hands flew to her mouth, muffling the sob that escaped her. She sat there, tears spilling down her cheeks as she whispered to herself, This can't be real. How could he? The thought of her boss, the man known for his strict standards and cold composure, going out of his way to do something so kind, left her overwhelmed. Her mother, resting in the next room, heard her crying and called out weakly, asking if everything was all right. Claire quickly wiped her tears and hurried over, trying to sound calm. But her mother could see the redness in her eyes. "What's wrong, sweetheart?" she asked softly. Claire hesitated, then sat beside her, holding her hand. "Mom, it's the hospital bill. It's gone. Someone paid it." Her mother frowned, confused. "What do you mean gone?" Claire turned her phone around, showing her the message from her boss. Her mother read it slowly, then looked back at her daughter. For a long moment she didn't say a word. Then she smiled faintly, her eyes glistening. "There are still good people in this world," she said quietly. Claire nodded, but her heart was still racing. "I don't even know what to say to him," she whispered. He didn't have to do this. That night she barely slept. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the email again. She thought about all the times she had dragged herself to the office, hiding her exhaustion behind a polite smile. She remembered the late nights, the skipped lunches, the quiet moments in the restroom when she'd catch her breath so no one would see her tears. And through all that, her boss had never known. Yet somehow, with one act, he had changed everything. The next morning, Claire sat at her small kitchen table with a cup of tea. The sunlight streamed through the thin curtains, and for the first time in months, she felt something she hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. She decided to write to her boss to thank him properly, but as she stared at the blank email, no words felt right. Every sentence she typed sounded too formal, too cold for what she wanted to say. After half an hour of trying, she finally wrote a short message. "I don't know how to thank you enough. You didn't have to do this, but you did, and I will never forget it. Please let me know how I can repay you." She hesitated before hitting send, unsure if she should. But then she took a deep breath and pressed the button. Minutes later, her phone buzzed. It was a reply from Daniel. "You don't owe me anything. Just promise you'll take care of yourself and your mom." That was all it said, but those words hit her harder than anything. It wasn't about money. It was about kindness. Quiet, genuine kindness. When she arrived at work the following Monday, she expected things to feel awkward. But everything was surprisingly normal. Her boss didn't bring it up, not even once. He treated her the same way he always had, professional, calm, and focused. It almost made her wonder if she'd imagined it all. But when she caught his glance in a meeting, there was something different in his eyes, a quiet understanding, maybe even concern. As the days passed, Claire found herself working with more energy. The constant pressure that had weighed on her chest seemed to lift. She still worked hard, but now there was warmth behind her effort. She wasn't just trying to survive anymore. She was doing something she loved. One afternoon, as she was leaving the office, Daniel happened to step into the elevator beside her. For a moment, silence filled the small space. She could feel her heart pounding. She wanted to say something, anything, but she wasn't sure how to begin. He was the one who spoke first. "How's your mother?" His tone was casual, but his eyes showed genuine care. "She's better," Claire replied softly. "Recovering well, thanks to you." He nodded, looking thoughtful. "I'm glad to hear that." There was a brief pause before he added, "You don't have to thank me, you know." "I just did what anyone should do," Claire smiled faintly. "Not everyone would, sir." He looked at her for a moment as if he wanted to say more, but the elevator doors opened. He gave her a small nod and stepped out, leaving her standing there, heart still full. Over the next few weeks, Claire noticed subtle changes around the office. Daniel seemed more approachable. He started taking a few minutes each day to walk around, chatting with staff, asking how they were doing. It wasn't something he'd done before. People whispered about how he seemed different, softer, more human. But no one knew the reason behind it. Claire did, though she never told anyone. She didn't want to draw attention or make him uncomfortable. She carried the secret quietly, cherishing the gesture that had restored her faith in people. Meanwhile, her mother's recovery continued to improve. Claire began spending her weekends at home, cooking her mother's favorite meals and sitting by her bedside telling her about work. Her mother always smiled and said, "You sound happier these days." And she was right. One evening, as Claire walked through the park near her apartment, She thought about how much had changed in such a short time. A few months ago, she was drowning in worry, trying to hold everything together. Now things weren't perfect, but they were lighter. It felt as if the world had given her a small pause, a chance to breathe again. She looked up at the fading sky, the colors melting into each other. For the first time, she allowed herself to hope for something beyond survival, maybe even happiness. The next morning at work, Daniel called for a meeting with a few team members, including Claire. He announced that the company would be starting a new initiative to support employees facing personal hardships. He said the idea had come after realizing how easily people could hide their struggles behind professionalism. "We're a team," he said, "and that means looking out for one another, not just meeting deadlines." As he spoke, Claire felt her eyes sting. She understood where the idea had come from, and the realization filled her with warmth. When the meeting ended, she approached him quietly and said, "It's a wonderful idea. Thank you for thinking of everyone." He looked at her for a moment and smiled faintly. "Sometimes it just takes one reminder," he said, "that people matter more than numbers." That evening, when Claire returned home, she told her mother about the new program. Her mother smiled proudly and said, "See? Your story is already helping others even if they don't know it." Claire laughed softly. "I didn't do anything, Mom." Her mother shook her head. "You lived through something hard with grace. That's enough." Later that night, Claire sat by the window, thinking about everything. The city lights glowed in the distance, and she thought about how one simple mistake, sending the wrong file, had changed the course of her life. She realized it wasn't just about money or kindness. It was about connection, about people seeing each other as more than just roles in a company. The next day, Daniel stopped by her desk before a meeting. He handed her a folder. "I want you to help lead the new project," he said. "You understand what it's about better than anyone." Claire looked up, surprised. "Me?" He nodded. "Yes, you've got heart, Claire. That's what this company needs." Her eyes widened, and for a moment she couldn't speak. Finally, she nodded. "I'll do my best," he smiled. "That's all I ask." As he walked away, Claire sat back in her chair, feeling a strange mix of pride and disbelief. For so long she had felt invisible. Now she was being trusted with something meaningful. The feeling was indescribable. That night she told her mother the news, and they celebrated with a small dinner at home. Her mother raised her glass of juice and said, "To new beginnings." Claire smiled. "To kindness that changes everything." As they laughed and ate together, Claire couldn't help but think about how one mistake, one small accidental email, had turned into a miracle. And deep down she knew it wasn't luck. It was humanity, the quiet kind that doesn't ask for thanks but leaves an impact that lasts forever. The next morning, the office was quieter than usual. The sound of keyboards and printers seemed faint compared to the thoughts running through Clara's mind. She kept her head low, avoiding eye contact as she walked past her colleagues. Everyone seemed to sense something had happened, but no one dared to ask. Rumors moved faster than air in that place. The night before, she hadn't been able to sleep. She kept replaying the email she accidentally sent, the one with her medical bill instead of the project report. She couldn't believe she had done something so foolish. Her heart had dropped when she saw the message had been opened. She expected to wake up to a termination notice or at least a harsh reprimand. Instead, she found a short message from her CEO. "We'll talk tomorrow." Now standing near her desk, she waited. Every vibration from her phone, every sound of a door opening, made her stomach twist. When her desk phone finally rang, she froze. It was his assistant asking her to come to his office. The walk down the hallway felt endless. Her palms were sweaty, and her heart pounded as she reached the glass door. She paused for a second, took a deep breath, and knocked. "Come in," a calm voice answered. Inside, the CEO sat behind his large wooden desk, the same composed expression he always wore. But this time there was something different in his eyes, a trace of curiosity, maybe even concern. He motioned for her to sit. For a few seconds, silence filled the room. Then he said softly, "Clara, I saw what you sent last night." Her chest tightened. She nodded, unable to speak. "I'm so sorry, sir," she whispered finally. "It was a mistake. I meant to send the report, but I attached the wrong file." He leaned back in his chair, his gaze still steady. "I figured as much. But I read it." Her eyes widened. "You read my medical bill?" she asked, voice trembling. "Yes. he said quietly, and I also read the notes written at the bottom, the doctor's comments. You've been dealing with a serious condition for quite some time, haven't you? She lowered her head, tears stinging her eyes. Yes, sir. I didn't want anyone to know. It's been difficult to manage, but I didn't want it to affect my work. He folded his hands. You've been working overtime for months, haven't you? Even when you weren't feeling well? She nodded, feeling small and exposed. I needed to. The treatments are expensive. I didn't want to lose my job, he sighed softly. Clara, I didn't call you here to reprimand you. I wanted to understand. He paused, his tone softening. You've been one of the most dedicated employees here. I had no idea you were going through this. Her throat tightened. I didn't want pity, sir. I just wanted to do my part. He nodded slowly. I respect that. He opened a folder on his desk and looked at a document for a few seconds before speaking again. I've already taken care of your medical bill. It's paid, Clara froze. She blinked, unsure if she heard him correctly. Paid, she repeated. Yes, he said simply. You don't owe a cent. You should focus on getting better. For a long moment, she couldn't speak. Her hands trembled and tears rolled down her cheeks. Sir, I can't accept that. It's too much. You don't even know me beyond work, he shook his head. That's not true. I know your work ethic, your integrity, and your strength. You've proven yourself in every way that matters. The room fell silent again except for the soft hum of the air conditioner. She wiped her tears, still in disbelief. Why would you do that for me? She asked quietly. He looked thoughtful. Because sometimes good people carry burdens they shouldn't have to carry alone. I have the means to help, and it's the right thing to do. Clara pressed her lips together, struggling to hold back her emotions. I don't know how to thank you. You don't need to, he said. Just promise me one thing, take care of yourself. Don't let work consume you. You matter more than the projects you deliver. She nodded slowly, still overwhelmed. He stood and walked toward the window, looking out at the city skyline. You remind me of someone I once knew, he said quietly. Someone who worked too hard, too long, and never asked for help. I couldn't help her back then. But maybe this time I can make a difference. Clara didn't know what to say. She simply sat there, tears falling silently, feeling something she hadn't felt in a long time. Being seen. The rest of the day passed in a blur. She returned to her desk, her coworkers whispering as she walked by, but she didn't care. Her mind replayed every word he said. She felt lighter, though part of her still couldn't believe it was real. Later that evening, when she got home, she found an envelope slipped under her door. Inside was a letter from the company's HR department. It confirmed that her medical expenses had been paid in full and that she had been granted paid leave for recovery. She sat on her couch, holding the letter close to her chest, tears streaming down her face again. She had never experienced such kindness, especially from someone in his position. Over the next few days, Clara began to allow herself to rest. The stress that had lived in her shoulders for months began to ease. She went for short walks, ate better, and even started journaling again. She realized how much of her life she had put on hold trying to stay afloat. Meanwhile, the CEO couldn't shake the feeling that there was more he could do. Her quiet strength reminded him of his late sister, who had once battled illness while hiding it from everyone until it was too late. Helping Clara felt like a way to honor her memory. He started checking in occasionally through email, nothing formal, just asking how she was doing. Clara, at first hesitant, began responding with short, polite updates. But soon their exchanges became more open. She told him about her progress, her small victories, and her gratitude. He admired her resilience and the way she found light in small things. Over time, their conversations became something both of them quietly looked forward to. As weeks passed, Clara's health began to improve. Her doctors were pleased with her recovery, and she started preparing to return to work. When she finally walked back into the office, people noticed the difference. She looked healthier, calmer, even hopeful. When she stopped by his office to thank him in person, he smiled. "You look much better," he said. "I feel better," she replied, smiling softly. "Thank you for giving me the chance to heal." He nodded. "You earned it." There was a quiet understanding between them, one built not on power or position but on humanity. And though the world around them moved fast, that simple act of kindness had changed both their lives in ways neither could have predicted. But deep down, Clara wondered, why her? Why had he chosen to help her so profoundly when he could have easily ignored it? What had he seen in her file that moved him so deeply? She didn't know the answer yet, but she was about to find out soon. The following weeks brought a quiet change in Clara's life. She had returned to work, but her days no longer felt heavy. She was more open, more at peace, and more grateful for the simple things she used to overlook. The morning sunlight through her window, the friendly nod from the security guard, the warm smell of coffee from the break room, everything felt like a small gift. One afternoon, the CEO called her into his office again. This time, there was no tension in her step. She walked in with a calm heart, curious but not afraid. He was standing near the window, holding a file. When he turned to face her, there was a gentle smile on his face. "Clara, how are you feeling these days?" he asked. "I'm doing better, sir," she replied softly. "The doctors say I'm almost in full recovery." "That's good to hear." He nodded approvingly. "You've been handling your workload well since returning. But there's something else I want to talk about." Her curiosity grew. He gestured for her to sit and then opened the file in his hands. Inside were pages filled with her project reports, performance summaries, and notes from department heads. "I've been reviewing your work," he said. "You've consistently gone above expectations. Your creativity, your attention to detail, and your leadership qualities have impressed more people than you realize." She smiled nervously. "Thank you, sir. I just try to do my best." "I know," he said, "and that's why I want you to take on a new role." Her eyes widened. "A new role?" "Yes," he continued. "There's a managerial position opening in your department. You've earned it. I believe you can lead the team." Clara's heart skipped. "Me? I've never managed a team before," he smiled. "You've already been doing it without the title. Your team looks up to you. You're the person they go to when things get complicated. You have the trust and respect that can't be taught." She was silent for a moment, taking in his words. "I don't know what to say." "Say yes," he said kindly. "And don't doubt yourself. You've earned this through hard work and courage." Her eyes softened. "Thank you, sir. I'll do my best. I know you will." He reached across the desk and handed her a document. It was her official promotion letter. She held it carefully, her heart swelling with disbelief and gratitude. "Congratulations, Clara. You deserve this." She left his office feeling lighter than air. For the first time in years, she allowed herself to smile freely. The same job that once felt like a burden now felt like a place of purpose. That evening, she called her mother, who lived in another city. When her mother picked up, Clara could barely contain her excitement. "Mom, you won't believe it. I got promoted." Her mother's laughter was full of joy and relief. "Oh, honey, I knew you could do it. You've worked so hard. I'm so proud of you." Clara smiled through tears. "I just can't believe it's real. After everything that happened, I thought my career was over." Her mother's voice softened. "Sometimes life surprises us when we least expect it. Maybe that man was sent your way for a reason." Clara nodded quietly, thinking about that. Maybe it was fate. Maybe some people entered your life not to stay, but to remind you that kindness still existed. The next morning, as she entered the office, her colleagues clapped and congratulated her. She felt shy at first, but then she looked around and realized she had earned their respect not because of her title, but because of who she was. Her journey had changed not only her life, but also the way others saw her. Later that week, the CEO invited her to a company dinner, a formal event where he planned to introduce her as the new department head. The evening was filled with laughter, music, and soft conversations. Clara sat quietly for most of it, feeling grateful but also reflective. When it was her turn to give a short speech, she stood up with trembling hands and faced the audience. She took a deep breath. "I don't know if I have the perfect words," she began, "but I just want to say thank you to everyone who believed in me even when I didn't believe in myself." She glanced toward the CEO, who gave her an encouraging nod. "A few months ago, I thought my world was falling apart. I was sick, scared, and exhausted. I tried to hide it because I didn't want to look weak. But then something unexpected happened. Someone saw me, not as a worker or a statistic, but as a person. And that changed everything." Her voice trembled slightly. "Kindness can heal more than medicine sometimes. It can make people believe again. So if I've learned anything, it's that we should never underestimate what a small act of compassion can do." The room fell silent for a moment, and then applause filled the air. The CEO smiled quietly, proud and moved. He didn't do it for recognition, but hearing her words reminded him why he made that choice in the first place. After the event, as the guests began to leave, Clara stood by the garden outside the venue, breathing in the cool night air. The CEO walked up beside her. For a moment, they stood in silence, watching the city lights shimmer in the distance. "You did well up there," he said. She smiled softly. "Thank you. I was nervous. You didn't look it." He glanced at her, his tone gentle. "I meant what I said before, Clara. People like you make this company what it is." "I'm glad you stayed," she nodded. "I almost didn't. That night I sent the wrong file. I thought it was the end for me." He chuckled lightly. "Funny how mistakes can sometimes lead to miracles." She looked up at him, her eyes filled with emotion. "You gave me more than help, sir. You gave me hope. I'll never forget that." He looked away for a moment, his voice quieter now. "I didn't do it expecting anything in return, but seeing you smile again, that's enough for me." They stood in silence for a while, the air filled with the sounds of distant traffic and laughter from inside the hall. It wasn't a romantic moment, but something deeper, a connection of understanding and shared humanity. As weeks turned into months, Clara settled into her new role. She grew confident, guiding her team with patience and empathy. Her experience had taught her the value of kindness, and she made sure to extend it to others. When new employees struggled, she took the time to listen. When someone looked tired, she asked if they were okay. Her department soon became known as one of the most supportive and productive in the company. One day she received an unexpected message from the CEO's assistant. He was retiring at the end of the year. Clara sat quietly after reading the news. A part of her felt sad, but she knew he deserved peace after years of leading others. A few weeks later, during his farewell ceremony, Clara waited until most guests had left before approaching him. He was standing by the window again, just as he had been the first day she walked into his office in fear. "You're really leaving," she said softly. He smiled. "Yes, it's time. The company is in good hands now." She stepped closer. "Thank you for everything. I wouldn't be here if it weren't for your kindness." He looked at her warmly. "You would have found your way, Clara. You just needed a little reminder of your strength." They shared a quiet moment before he turned to her one last time. "Promise me something. When you see someone struggling, don't look away. Do for them what someone once did for you." She nodded, her eyes glistening. "I promise." When he left that evening, Clara watched him walk out of the building, feeling both gratitude and peace. Life had a strange way of bringing people together, sometimes through accidents, sometimes through compassion, but always for a reason. Months later, Clara stood in her new office, now a senior leader in the company. A new employee knocked on her door, looking nervous and holding a stack of papers. "Sorry to bother you, ma'am," the young woman said. "I think I sent the wrong file in an email to the director. I'm so scared I'll lose my job." Clara smiled gently and motioned for her to sit. "It's okay," she said softly. "Everyone makes mistakes. Take a deep breath and let's fix it together." As she guided the young woman through her problem, Clara felt a quiet warmth in her heart. She realized that the story had come full circle. The same way someone once chose to see her as a person and not a mistake, she was now doing the same for someone else. And maybe that was the true gift hidden in that long-ago error, not just her recovery or success, but the chance to carry forward the kindness that had once saved her.